Hello everyone, Raquel here. I'm a crafter for Tonic Studios, and today we're assembling the retro register gift box. So this is a 32-piece die set. It's going to allow you to create a gorgeous retro style register that you can use as a gift box, as I mentioned, with the title, of course. It has a little drawer that you can create, or you can also have it open on the top. So there's a die to allow you to do that, and it also has a moving handle that you can pull up and down. Really pretty. So I'm going to cut out the pieces and share with you how you can quickly and easily create this adorable gift box. Before I proceed, I do want to let you know that for the layers of my gift box, I will be using shabby meadow papers along with the oyster gray classic card for the base. And I'm also going to be using mirror cardstock. It's called Baroque Rose, and it looks like this. And that's going to be for all of the detail layers. I thought it would be a beautiful combination with the colors in this paper. So you can go ahead and use the papers of your preference, of course. We're going to begin here. You're going to be using this die here to create two panels. As you see, I've cut them out. And before you continue your assembly, you're going to place this right over your paper one more time to help you with the placement of this die here. This is going to create an aperture here in the center. So you're merely using this for placement, but once you have that exactly where you need, tack this down in the center. And then make sure to cut this out of the middle, and you'll do it again on the other one. And also make sure you do this before you add any layers. Once you've die cut these, you should have two panels that look like this, with the little circles cut out of the center. Now this has a really beautiful feature here, which is that it does deboss your paper very nicely. I'm going to take a medium mat here and also some Nouveau embellishment mousse. This happens to be in the color Pure Platinum, and I'm simply going to highlight that with a brush, just with a light application. And that's really going to help that stand out. So I'm going to do that on both. Okay, so I'll be adding a little bit more shimmer to that paper, just here and there. To assemble this, of course, you're going to attach two of the squares initially, and I'm going to simply burnish these. But before I begin my assembly, I do want to decorate these panels while they're still flat. That's where these dies come in. You can use a singular outer edge, as you see here. That's going to give you a solid panel to decorate. Or you can use both together and run that through your machine with your prettier paper. That way you get this beautiful result. And I always recommend you use the shinier paper or the mirror card for the outermost layer. You can simply adhere these together. you can take one of the large squares and you can adhere this to the center to connect the two in the middle. So you can apply your adhesive to that tab. Match it up to the edge. Just make sure it's not overlapping that edge. Just meeting right up to that edge. And then burnish that. Do the same for the opposite side. And double check that, make sure it lines up nicely. And then burnish that tab. So now you have one long piece like this, and you have tabs that face the bottom. And you can use this die here to create yet one more tab. So this you'll fold in half before you apply it to the bottom of the center square. So we just want to make sure this is a mountain fold that you can burnish to make sure you get a crisp line there to one of the edges here. Now apply this with the folded edge facing the bottom of your center square. You can burnish that as well. Here is where you can use this long tab now to apply the second square. And apply your adhesive to that tab, place your square on your table, and then fold that over. I'm going to flip that over and verify that this is nice and straight. And of course you can burnish that as well. So now you have something that looks like this. We're going to set this aside a moment and work on the next portion. I'm now going to create the moving mechanism for this box. There's a large cog that you can cut out, and for this project we can use a total of 8. So it's going to be 4 and 4. Go ahead and cut those out. And I am using 300 GSM cardstock purposely to get a nice sturdy finish to this. And you then have this center circle that you already use to cut into these panels. So use the same one and cut out 14 circles. I'm also using 300 GSM card for this, as you can tell. And then there's this piece here, and this is called the rail. And it's specified in the instructions to cut as needed, but because this needs to be the same thickness as the cogs in your mechanism, then go ahead and cut them out of the same weight. And you do need a total of 4 for each side so that it matches the thickness of the papers. I hope that makes sense, but that's why I'm showing it now. So what's important here is that you match the shapes that you have in the center of these cogs to one another so that you get a perfect alignment when you're adhering them. Then I'm going to take the second piece, match up the shapes in the center, and then make sure it aligns all the way around before applying any pressure. So I'm going to repeat this 2 more times. I want this to dry nice and flat, so while it's drying, I'm actually going to place an acrylic block right on top just to add a little bit of weight to that while I work on the next one, because I will need 2. going to take 2 stacks of 5 of my inner circles, and I'm going to repeat the same method of aligning these together and adhering them one to another. Repeat that with your second set of 5. Now while those stacks are drying, you may as well do these as well. And this way you get yourself all prepped for the assembly. So now do that one more time so you get 2 stacks of 4. I'll be coloring these also, but this is not compulsory. Now let's prep our little cogs with the circles. The stacks of 5 we glue together. We're going to adhere them to match that shape as well. So apply a bit of adhesive here, and again match these up. So I'm doing smooth side out on both of these. So we should have 2 pieces that look like this. We're going to now add them to our foundation piece that we created. This portion is going to face out like that. Once that axle is inside of that aperture, we're now going to take a lever panel and we're going to match this as well. So make sure your little shapes coincide, and then adhere this directly, applying adhesive only to this circular portion here. So match these up really nicely. We're going to repeat that on the opposite side. Take your axle and put it this way. Press it through that aperture. Take your lever panel and adhere it directly on top. And this was the die that you could use to cut out the lever panels. Make sure, however, that you cut a total of 4. So first we'll adhere these 2. That's going to match just like this. You're going to cut out 4 pieces of the large arm die cut. You're going to notice that this does have a curved edge and a flat edge. So make sure you cut out 4 of those. Stack 2 together and adhere them. Match up that curved edge. And matching this to the side panel, you're going to add this, making sure that that curvature matches your die cut here. Apply adhesive here in the center and apply this die cut right on top, making sure that the adhesive is only on that little portion there. If you'd like to, if you want to work on both sides at one time as I am, then you can repeat that on the opposite side. Now you're going to adhere a stack of 2 inner circle die cuts, making sure to match these. They're the same ones that you used before. Once you've stacked those together, you're now going to match them up to this piece. And then adhere that one right on top. We're now going to use the small arm. We already used the longer one, so cut 4 pieces, or if you'd like to, you can cut out 2 depending on the weight of your paper. I've cut out 4 total because I'm going to be stacking mine, and this is going to help this become more rigid. And it's a moving part, so I highly recommend thicker paper, and this is just a way to ensure that. So make sure you do match that curved edge. Once those are glued together, you're again going to take a lever panel. This is going to cover this portion, and then you're going to match up the rest with that arm panel. You can again verify that this moves nicely. It should move very smooth actually. Now that this mechanism is complete on both sides, we can adhere the 2 side tabs that are on the bottom. And these are going to fold and adhere to the bottom square. Repeat the same thing on the opposite side. You should have something that looks like this. And now you can take your 3rd large square and hide those tabs at the bottom by adhering that right inside. We're going to create our handle panel using this die here. You'll notice that it does cut a tab, and this is the one with the sharper edge all the way around. It also has a layer panel that you can use to decorate it. So what I'm doing here is alternating the colors of my layer panels, and I'm using the Baroque Rose and also the pretty papers that I've chosen. And I'm simply going to layer these on first as my paper is still flat. You can go ahead and fold and burnish the longer tab on both, as well as the center fold here and the side tabs. You're going to attach both of these one to another along that long tab. And burnish that. Fold this over. And you can match up the opposite side. Now these are going to adhere along these shorter tabs onto these handles that you created. Adhesive to all 4 tabs. And make sure you adhere it so that it matches the top edge of that handle and the sides. And while you're holding that, you can apply adhesive to the opposite side and then match up that handle as well, which you're going to have to hold in place. So just find a comfortable place. So that way you get an even adhesion all the way around as you're applying pressure. Now once your handle is completely dry and you're able to move this out of the way, you'll be able to more comfortably continue crafting on here. However, there is this portion here that you can decorate, and there are 2 dies. There's this decorative portion, and as you can see, I've used it to cut into this paper, and then there's the circle die to complete that. And what I've done is, as you can see here, I've cut decorative paper with the circle die, and then with the 2 dies combined, there's this top layer. And then here in the center, hopefully you can see the little detail I've added into that. I'm going to show you how to do that. But this is going to adhere right here to cover this now. Of course, you choose which way to face this. But I'm going to place that there in the center. And then we're going to do the other side, but let me show you how to use these dies for further detail. As you can see here, I have a piece of that oyster gray cardstock, and I did use my Nuvo embellishment mousse, and I colored that cardstock to get that beautiful pearlescent finish. And I'm going to layer my circles. You don't need a lot of adhesive, but it does dry clear in case you add too much. Layer these together, and once you've used that center portion alone, you can then pop out the pieces you'd like to use and layer them accordingly. So these are a little bit different, and you can do this with as many colors as you like, of course. I love taking advantage of this feature from Tonic Studios dies. It's probably one of my favorite things to do. This is where you can really personalize the look of your crafts. And it's that easy. So again, you continue this with either drops, gems, paper, however you like. And then you also, depending on how you plan this cutting, you can use this for a card or any other craft. I'm going to make sure it matches the other side, so I'm just strategically going to position this. There we go. So pretty. Beautiful detail. And I'm doing this now so that I can press it from the inside, and that way I can ensure the application is nice and adhered fully before I proceed with the drawer, which is the next step we're going to take. So you can set that aside. We can now make the little drawer that will fit inside of our register. You're going to need the smaller of the 2 square dies, and you can cut that out once. I've also cut it out a second time because I'm going to be decorating the inside with that beautiful paper that's decorative. And you're going to cut out 4 pieces, which will be the side panels for your drawer using this die. You'll notice that it only has 2 tabs. And then there are the decorative layers you can use. I've cut one out using the decorative paper, and then I've cut the uppermost layer using both of those dies with the mirror card. Then there's an oval die there that's rectangular. I've cut out a layer, and there is a pull that you can cut using this die here. I've cut it out of that oyster gray, and it does have a decorative layer that we'll be using. Another die in your set is this rectangle. It's actually meant for the top portion of this build. However, I did go ahead and use that to cut decorative papers that will line the inside of the drawer, and I just cut it down a tiny bit using my scissors so that they'll fit. Now I'm going to do the decorative layers first, just to have those handy, and they're going to match perfectly, of course, here. I find it a little bit easier to show this way. That pretty handle has some little score lines. Fold the closest ones away from yourself, and then fold the outer ones as a V. So you have a valley, mountain, mountain, and valley fold. You're going to use the decorative layer to complete that. And then on those half moon tabs there, apply your adhesive and match those up to the outer edge of this decorative layer here, so that you can create your little drawer pull. This entire thing is going to go on one of these panels on the outside, but let's set that aside to dry. And as you can tell, I've folded and burnished the tabs. These are going to adhere onto the outer perimeter of this square to create our drawer. Once all of this is complete, you can go ahead and start adhering the shorter tabs onto the adjacent panels to form your drawer. Here, of course, you can decorate the inside as I'll be doing. You could do this step while your papers are still flat, but once you have this pretty paper lined on the inside, you can take your little rail portions and you're going to adhere these on the outside of this box on opposite sides. So it's personal preference. The instructions do say to do this while the paper is still flat, but I'm just going to do it now. I don't think it's going to be of any consequence. Just make sure that flat edge reaches all the way to the bottom. One thing you want to make sure you do is that you have the flat edge of this die cut facing what will be the front of your drawer. I got a little ahead of myself, I'm going to confess, but here I've cut it and added my embellishment mousse on that. So of course it's opposite of what you see here, so I had to flip it over, add my mousse on that side, only because I did want to color that. Now on the opposite side of this, I'm going to adhere the other rail, again with that flat edge facing out, and making sure that this is all the way to the bottom to match the other one. So I did have to remove my first one, and I apologize for getting ahead of myself here. An error there, but it can be fixed, of course. Alright, Don't want to mislead you. Okay, so this is going to be all the way to the bottom. We want to make sure we add plenty of pressure there without putting any bend in our paper, of course. Nothing is lost. It's now perfectly applied. And I think I'm going to have this be the front. So this is where I'm going to add this decorative layer. And I'm going to try to make sure to center this nicely. We're now going to use two shelf panels. They look like this and have a curve at one of the edges. And it does have a layer that you can cut out. I've gone ahead and decorated mine. You're also going to use the front panel, cut this out twice, and if you want to decorate it, you're going to need this portion twice. And then of course you can use one more of these circles. For the shelf panels, you're going to fold the half moon tab away from yourself and burnish that. So that is a mountain fold. The bottom tab is a valley fold, so fold that as a V and repeat that for the second piece. For the center panel, you're going to want to burnish this in your hand just to create a curvature, get this used to curving, and you're going to do that for both. Now for this portion, as you can see here, I've already adhered the decorative portion of this, but what I like to do is to curve it as I'm adhering that. This way that mirror cardstock will not crack. So I've gone ahead and used those pretty decorative layers as I did before. I'm going to apply this here, and I'll just finish decorating this off camera so that I don't take up too much of your time. But I'm going to hold it like this to make sure that that paper does not crack while it's drying. And then you can really add a really good curve to that. While this is drying, we're going to attach these pieces along the long side. We're going to attach the shorter of the tabs, not the wide one. Add this to one edge. Repeat that on the opposite edge. I'm going to help myself to some Craft Perfect double-sided tissue tape, and I'm only going to apply this on the two shorter edges of that center portion just to help myself. Now to adhere this to our base piece, we're going to fold back these little triangular portions very gently, because you don't want to surpass that edge. We'll be attaching this piece now. However, we want to fold down one of the half moon tabs here onto the same piece. To adhere this. Once that is adhered, this one is going to face the bottom. We're going to adhere it right to the front, and we're going to make sure that the top edge matches this corner here. You're going to want to apply your adhesive to that tab and make sure it's at that 90-degree angle there. Remove the backing to that adhesive, and if you like to reinforce this, you can add a little tiny drop of adhesive to each one of those little pieces of paper there. And then just walk this over. Now, of course, I'm manipulating this to make it comfortable for myself. But what I'm trying to do is make sure that I can push those little tabs right along that edge. And that's where that double-sided adhesive helps to get that initial tack. And of course you want it to meet the opposite end there really neatly. Will adhere to the top. Okay, you can now flip this over and repeat the same steps on the opposite side. Take your time, you should have something that looks like this. And now you can add your second layer. That's the decorative portion. Right on top, I've gone ahead and added double-sided adhesive as well. I'm going to place this right on top now. Press on the opposite end, making sure that I'm still curving that paper. You want to hold it on the inside so you can get a good amount of pressure there. Now to create the top panel, you'll be using the die that has the 3 outer tabs, and then you can also use the decorative dies to create a layer. Don't forget that if you want to have a slit onto this portion here, you will have to match up that smaller die, and of course you can group it with the other dies so that you know exactly where to place it if you're going to be adding the layers. So don't forget to do that before you do any adhesion, and that way you get the result that you like. I'm just going to decorate this portion, and it'll be a solid top, so it's up to you. You want to fold and burnish these folds all as mountain folds. I meant to say tabs. You want to fold the tabs as mountain folds and burnish all of them here, depending on the style of craft you want to make. I'm going to press this here first. I'm going to move that little handle to make sure that I can burnish this. You can apply adhesive to the side tabs and also to the wider tab here to close this off. That completes the top, and now I can move the handle as I wish. I'm going to put it all the way to the top, and here is where I can now feed the little drawer to go inside, and you'll see that you do need to work with the mechanics in order for this to close. And you'll see how the handle will move your little drawer. So depending on how you want this to face, you can first position this little portion and then feed the drawer. And I'll give you an example. If you want it to stop up here, you can feed the drawer once that handle's in the position you like. Push it back, and then when you open it, all you have to do is pull on that lever that you've created. I think it's really fun, super adorable, and also very easy to make so long as you practice a little patience. Okay, so here's my finished project. I did have some little flowers from Little Birdie, and these were available at the Tonic US website, and they're called Fairy Rosa Woodland. And I just thought it'd be really nice to finish off the top. So I did add them on here. Now they don't come like this. They come with a little cluster, and they're adhered onto what you see here is this paper that's very kind of like mulberry paper. But in any case, I took it apart and I added it to the top here. I thought that gave it a really beautiful finish. I added a double bow and also some charms from my stash, and I just thought that gave it the look that I like, which is a bit shabby. And I did add some gems of my own here as well. And as you can tell, some of the little papers that I also added as inlay were embellished with that gorgeous mousse. So this completes my video tutorial. Don't forget to follow Tonic Studios on the official Facebook page, where you can also share what you make when you get these dies on hand. All links will be available below in the description of this video. I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as I always say, I hope that you can be inspired and be blessed, and I thank you so much for watching.